to tell me if we're broadcasting this to YouTube or not. Sometimes I think we're broadcasting to YouTube and we're not, and sometimes we are, and I don't know. So I gotta see. I gotta look at my own channel to see if we're live.
Right now, we are not live on YouTube. Wait, we are.
Yeah, we're literally live on YouTube. I'm watching it right now. Hey, look at that. Hey, Bryce, we're live.
Yeah, I do see that. It just has it has last week's thing on there, right?
Title. That's a shame. That's a real shame. But you know what? Hey, good on us. We're doing it. We're staying consistent. I am certain that anyone who is looking to watch this show on Monday must have been confused as to why we were not recording on Monday. But
yeah, and me and you are the two that aren't logged into the account. So if anyone finds us live tonight, it's because they found us. It's not because they were told.
Yeah, they weren't told on Twitter that we're live. They weren't told on Threads that we're live. They certainly did not see on TikTok or Instagram that we're live. You know, I've never noticed Riverside actually putting a live on the thing. I've always seen the record thing. I've never seen a live thing. I wonder if that's
funny. Does it just take like an RSS feed and then it just?
Yeah, you link it all together. I can show you after we're done, but yeah, there's a specific link that you populate in, and it goes to like the actual YouTube page, and there's a whole bunch of other things that you can broadcast to. I think you can go to like Twitch and a few other places as well. So
I got our chat box open just in case anyone says anything during it.
Hey, you never know. You never know, but I don't know. What do you think? Should we get started? Should we talk about soccer?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
I always have so much fun playing around with the music. I gotta tell you, every time makes me very happy. Hey, this is a Tuesday. If you're watching this live, if you're listening to this, forget that. It doesn't matter what day this was recorded on. Certainly not. I would never date our content like that, despite the fact that I've done it many times. So, hey, anyways, welcome back to the MLS Now podcast. I'm your host, Russell. You can find me on social media at Mr. Danger Russ. You can find the podcast on social media at MLS Now Podcast. And most importantly, you can find us also on the website at mlsnowpodcast.com. Speaking of which, our wonderful, amazing, fantastic, fabulous, certainly other adjectives exist, but it's like 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, so I don't yet know them or remember them, or I forgot them. But our wonderful, fantastic, joyous, reliable, and all that website admin, Bryce, is on the podcast with us. Bryce, you can find him on social media. What, B Leslie 19, I think.
B Leslie 19. Yep.
There you go. Nailed it.
Thanks for that, Russell. Yeah, it feels good. I finally have cleared my team policy suspension, so now I'm luckily enough to be back on here tonight. As you see, someone isn't on here. I don't think you've ever seen me and Gavin in the same room in 2024. There's a reason to that.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I've never actually seen you and Gavin in the same room in general. So, I mean, if you're a listener, take from that what you will, because just saying.
Also, I have a cryptic start for you tonight. So
tell me your cryptic start.
Drink of the choice tonight. It's backwards for you, but it's a Crab Mania IPA, New England IPA, and there's 2 reasons why I'm drinking it. Can you name me the 2 reasons?
Oh, well, let's see here. First of all, you must have known that I had some amazing New England clam chowder while I was on vacation. So you're having a crab IPA to celebrate the fact that I am back from vacation and that I had amazing New England clam chowder. So was that reason number 1?
Yeah, 3 reasons. Yep, you got one of them. 3, yep.
Perfect. Nailed it. The second one, couldn't tell you. Is it crab season in New England?
Second one, New England. First win of the year. First MLS win of the year. Number 3, it's an IPA, not a porter, because New England fans don't like porter with me. So good and a bad for that, but it's a good tasting brew for this episode. Feels good to be back.
I love that. That's a phenomenal choice there. I'm blown away. I've got coffee, so
feel that I'm working from home tomorrow, so I can have a couple beers.
Yeah,
you work from home every day, so you know how it is.
It's funny. I'm actually not working from home tomorrow, so I will be on site in the office tomorrow in
Nice.
A very short layover from returning from vacation. I knew myself well enough that I would not want to have a meeting in the office the day I come back, but the second day, maybe I'm having some regrets about that now. I'll never admit it. Point being, though, I've got coffee. You've got a New England Crab IPA. Side note, I don't like IPAs.
I see. You just got to find a good place to start, and the flavor kind of keeps with you. So
I'm like a stout guy, if I'm being honest. Give me something
that's
dark. Give
fair.
me something heavy.
So you are a Porter fan.
I mean, I'm a fan. Unfortunately, right? I'm a fan of Porter the drink, not Porter the coach.
Fair, fair.
I don't know if anyone's a fan of Porter the coach. I don't know if even Porter's a fan of himself. He must be, but
I'm sure
look, hey,
Portland and Columbus appreciated him for a season or
yeah, they
two.
appreciated him when they were winning.
Yeah, but New England fans, unfortunately, have not seen that start, but they did last weekend.
Yeah, yeah, we will get into that and more on this episode. But first, hey, Bryce, I want to talk to you about something that happened today, actually. So
What
I'm
happened?
glad that we are recording this later. There was a super secret, official boys club meeting. The ownership of the MLS teams had an owners meeting today. Interesting guest cameo appearance. Gianni Infantino was also at that meeting. Now, I think to me, the hilarious and kind of sad immediate assumption that I had was what anti-player, anti-soccer policy did these owners and Infantino come up with together while they were all in the same room with each other?
Isn't this the first time that he's been with like MLS owners before? Like this is a pretty big
Yeah,
thing, right?
this is an unusual, unprecedented thing. So you are correct. I don't, and not only that, I think it's the first time any FIFA president has ever met directly with ownership groups.
Yeah, and there's nothing about what they've talked about, right? So it's our job to conspirize this thing.
Yeah, there were some people tweeting throughout the day from various news outlets. I didn't really follow it, so yes, I agree. I'm planning fully to just put the tinfoil hat on, which is why I'd like to ask you, what are what are some terrible ideas do you think that they've conceived? My tinfoil hat is they tried to propose to Infantino the idea of why every single league globally should do a salary cap for players.
Yeah, that'd be a really good one. Another one maybe could be kind of how like pro rel actually shouldn't happen. You should just keep everyone where they're at. That would be a really good start. I think maybe they just really want to learn about the super draft. Maybe that's just a big thing nowadays. And you know, the draft concept, it doesn't have to be just with the clubs and the leagues. Maybe they can start taking that up with the tournaments. You can just start having the teams in the pots. You just start drafting each other instead of it being rigged within itself within FIFA, anyways.
Maybe Bryce, our lovely pseudo tournament. It's kind of a fake tournament, and yet it's a real tournament, and teams take it more seriously than historic tournaments that we have in this nation. Maybe they're trying to convince Infantino to send a different league every year to the League's Cup in summer.
That could be it. That's actually a realistic option right there. I think
Yeah,
maybe.
you know what? I think you're right. Out of everything we've said, that may be the one with the highest chance of happening, which says something because I think there's a less than 1% chance of that ever actually happening.
Yeah. Maybe we're trying to get to NFL to get 32 teams, but we want to get a couple. We're going to get a couple of FIFA's best teams to come play their B team instead.
Right. Or what it is, Bryce. I think obviously they're trying to bring Infantino in on, ownership group. They want him to start a franchise over in like Switzerland or, Italy or somewhere like that. And we'll have, like the Rome, or we'll have, like, I don't know, the London Fog.
Don't forget about United FC after that
Yeah.
too.
London, the London Fog United SC. because it's an American brand, so they can't use FC.
FC.
Yeah, it's got to be SC.
So realistically, though, what are some ideas you think that could be talking about? Do you think it could be to do with like the World Cup coming in 2 years, or is that like something a little too simple?
To me, I would say the simplest solution is probably your most likely, even if it's not 100%, right? Like maybe it's a 30 to 40% chance that they're talking about World Cup, where maybe Infantino's coming in saying, hey, listen, we need to have these talks about what are we going to do logistics wise with these matches. We have concerns, SoFi Stadium. Obviously, that pulled out, I think, from the World Cup because they didn't want to modify their field, and there were like naming rights issues with that as well. And so Infantino's maybe showing up saying, "Hey, listen, I know you guys own soccer teams, and some of you own these stadiums or own the teams that lease these stadiums, and we need to have a chat about the expectations of what the World Cup's going to look like from a soccer playing surface perspective." Who knows? I think you're right, though. That's probably the simplest and most likely explanation.
The only thing is like, why just MLS to the point? I guess maybe you're talking about SoFi, but you think that there would be more of an announcement of getting the like Liga MX teams and into it as well. So maybe he's making 2 trips, but
Maybe, yeah.
it's
Well, the Liga MX sides, I mean, they're playing all those in soccer stadiums. I think like they're playing in
that's a fair
Monterrey,
point.
and I think they're playing at the Azteca in Mexico City, and one other place that it escapes me right now where the third Mexico location is. I think it's somewhere on the western side of Mexico, but
Yeah. So yeah, I'm curious to see if like things start to leak out a little bit more. Nothing stays a secret. So if it's known he's here, it's definitely going to be figured out soon. But that's my guess right now is something with the World Cup. Let's see if it develops into something more. I really can't see MLS and FIFA doing it, and maybe it could be a Club World Cup like type thing being hosted in the U.S. and they want to maybe expand more teams. It could be a lot of things, but
maybe,
we
yeah.
we could sit here the whole time coming up with a bunch of solutions and fun ones and realistic ones, but I'll for now
Yeah.
I'll go with the World Cup since the timeline is creeping in a little bit day by day.
I think that's the one that I would lean to as well, just for the sake of argument and rounding out our options. I think maybe a runner up could be perhaps. So let me think here. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe something about like academies. Maybe he's popping his head in to talk about like the development and the future of soccer, and he maybe wants to understand more about what they're doing with MLS Next Pro and what they expect from these teams, and maybe to really get an understanding of if the US is ever going to be a talent development powerhouse, which they say they want to be. How are they going to do that through MLS Next Pro, and are there any logistical or maybe legal challenges to starting yet another league? Not that I can think of there being any. I mean, the EPL has their own independent league as well for all
Yeah.
their academy teams, but neither here nor there. It's just a potential follow up, right? It impacts the game long term, which should be what Infantino's focusing on.
Maybe he wanted to find out how the allocation order didn't work out here in the MLS. That's my last take, last thought on it.
Yeah. I think what he's doing is he's actually showing up to put in a late claim on Messi for the discovery rights. So
Yeah, he's trying to figure out. Like he thought for some reason that FC Porto like had their name in the cap before Miami, so he's a little confused how that worked out.
yeah, no, turns out
They need
weird
some
thing,
they
right?
need some GAM from it, so
Yeah,
maybe that's how they funded his flight here. They used GAM at the airport.
maybe they'll send like 100,000 in GAM. I know normally 50,000 seems to be the going rate for discovery rights, but hey, it's Messi. It's got to be a big discovery rights fee.
Yeah,
100,000
for
seems
sure.
right.
I mean, to find someone like that, it's pretty impressive. So you definitely have to compensate him from that. I don't know. I don't think they would have found Messi without that system.
Yeah, certainly not. I mean, it's generational talent, but truly, it's unbelievable to see what Messi's really developed into since coming to the U.S. I mean, shocking, really. I mean, kudos to Miami for the vision
What do we
on.
make it? 10 minutes finally saying Messi's name. We did it. We said
Yeah,
his
we
name
said
in
it.
vain.
Yep. It was 15, actually, according to the timer. So we really did quite well. 15 whole minutes before we talked about Messi. I think that's a new record for the pod. I think as well it's a new record for us continuing to talk about anything other than the matches that we're actually supposed to be talking about. Bryce, you and I are two very busy individuals. I was on vacation. You have a passion project. You have an opportunity. You have a very fun thing you're doing with some collegiate sports. So I think this episode is going to look a little different than normal. We are lacking Gavin, who sources confirm. As I'm looking at my phone, I'm hold on right now. I'm receiving reports from the field. Yes, Gavin does in fact hate us. He's not on the podcast because he doesn't like us anymore. So, anyways, Bryce, congratulations on your promotion to new Gavin.
Thank you. Yeah. It's been a position I've been waiting for this quite some time. We keep pushing off talking about MLS soccer, so I might as well just do it in my acceptance speech so far. So the only thing I won't accept is the Lions blog account. I'll have to twist that into some Atlanta United account.
Yeah, well, some would say that Atlanta United are the Lions of Georgia. So,
yeah, we're a lot of things in Georgia.
Look, they always say, a lion never changes its stripes. So,
that's beautiful.
Yeah. And,
all right.
Lions, well known for having 5 stripes.
So how are we breaking this down tonight, Russell?
I want to talk very high level, just about some matches first. And then, maybe we're just going to talk about where the teams actually sit right now. Overall, some problems, some questions that we have on these teams, just kind of a high level sort of the good, the bad, the ugly, right? As to what's going on here. And we're going to start with NYCFC versus Atlanta. It's a 1-1 draw. NYCFC, Coach Joe sent in a wonderful correspondence corner, and I think it's actually a excellent starting point to set the tone on this. I just need to actually find it in my list of correspondent corners. Yes, here it is. Coach Joe says, he writes into us, New York City FC. Not many teams in MLS get 2 home openers, but here we are with our first match of 2024 at Citi Field for NYCFC, adjacent to the site of our future permanent residence in the world's borough. The Pigeons put in yet another underwhelming performance in front of one of the smallest crowds Citi Field has seen for an NYCFC match. NYCFC went up 1-0 on a savvy PK by now veteran designated player Santi Rodriguez. However, of course, a Cushing-led squad succumbed to a counterattack led by geriatric Brad Guzan. Par for the course for the City Boys. Cushing's seat incrementally warmer after match day 7. And I think, this hits on all the talking points that I would actually talk about for both clubs. NYCFC, look, they are a huge brand in the sense of they're inside of New York City. There's unlimited potential in this location, and yet uninspired with their coaching right now. I mean, look, the best time to get rid of Cushing was after they brought him on full time. The second best time is right now, this second, and they're not going to do either of those things. They're putting in this huge stadium, right? It's going to change, hopefully, the perception and the atmosphere around the team. And yet, what are you doing to build hype for it? Are you just saying, hey, by 2026 or 2027, whenever it officially gets finished being constructed and opens, we're going to have built this big loyal following. We're going to have, people just absolutely hyped and built up and invested, and they've been waiting all these years. They've been going to these matches, and it's a big reward for them. But what are you doing to get to that is my question. I mean, how is any of what they're doing right now good for their brand and good for the sport?
I tell you, when they announced NYCFC was going to join the league, I thought it was very clear that they were just going to steal that market up there in the Northeast completely. Obviously, the Red Bulls not located in the city. That was going to be New York's team. And unfortunately, there's pretty much everything wrong could have happened. From the start, they really had, big names, Davi Villa, Perlo. You could talk about retirement league, where they were at in their careers or not, but still big names to kind of initiate the brand itself. You have guys that can say they wore those jerseys in their career, and then you went through some really good phases of good teams, MLS Cup. Morales was great there for a long time at the camp. Castellanos doing great overseas, and now they've just kind of hit a really big stopping point. And there's not really any explanation for it. What is their stadium coming in 2027? It is, I believe, or it's going
Somewhere in there. Yeah, it's
the,
like 26 or 27.
It's just you're missing a big window here. And as much as we joke about Cushing out, like it's crazy that they're at this point. Their player mold is still interesting. How they bring these players in of like pretty solid potential, but very much unknowns, and they just feel like kind of like the city football group tryout point. But that's not what a New York City based team should be in any league. So it's a shame where they're at right now. That they should be competing for the names that are going to Miami or LA. Like they're kind of like the other spot where the names like Messi or like Drew are going to come to, and like Griezmann. Like those are the cities they want to come.
Right. Those are the markets where MLS would love to see them as well. But here's my thing. If NYCFC was not under the City Football Group umbrella, would any players be going there seeing what's going on? Like, legitimately, how many people would see Nick Cushing and would say, "Oh yeah, I want to go play for this guy"? Like,
yeah, no shot. Like it's within itself, it's not an attractive place to play football right now. Like, how are you going to convince someone to play on either Yankee Stadium or Citi Field? Like, it's like obviously with MLS now, I hear it from Joe more often, and I see it a little bit more than Atlanta fans. But I think this past weekend was a reminder how it is for NYCFC. It's like, all right, we checked off the annual baseball field pitch to play on until potentially a playoff series. So it's like, all right, get that out of the way in April. You don't have to worry about it again. But those players have to go through a full season of that. Like how they talk about not wanting to play on turf in Atlanta. Who wants to go play on a baseball field? Like that's just and who wants to go watch it? Joe embraces it, but I know Joe's going to embrace it when they finally get a soccer-specific stadium in the city even more. I don't know. I don't care how much he defends it. He's just pushing it off until that glory finally comes to light.
Yeah, and you know what? When they do get it, I'll make a trip out there, 100%. I think it's gonna be a cool stadium.
How far of a drive is it for you? It's only like a 5-hour drive for me.
Yeah, it's probably closer to like a 8 to 10 hour drive. But Midwest, that's not bad. That's standard
weekend
for us.
Trip, not bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you drive on a Friday. They got that 7:30 p.m. Saturday match, and then you leave Sunday morning, and you're back home, and you go to work the next day. Honestly, perfect. Yeah, MLS has nailed it.
Quick tangent, real quick. You think the 7:30 time is going to stick? You think?
I hope not.
I want to watch more matches. That's another thing. Is of course I watched Atlanta United play at 7:30, so that's another reason why I can't talk about a lot of these games because I have to do my catch-up time during the week to do it. So I'm not going to watch extra time when my team's on. So it's I would love the NFL window is perfect. Like that Sunday, I think would be a great opportunity for soccer. You could get like the 1, 4, and 8, at least like 3 matches there. I know they're trying to do that a little bit more, at least early on, but even Saturday, like maybe try to get like a 4:30 window, a 7:30 window, and a 9:30 window. Just split it up at maybe they're just trying to get consistency to start to get the local fans out, but then try to get national fans more into it.
I'm going to be honest. I was in, the West Coast this past weekend when these matches were kicking off. So for me, I got to watch FC Cincinnati at 4:30 p.m. local time. And it was so weird because, like, if you're planning to, say, go out to dinner or you're going to, like, go do literally something, anything, right? If you were, say, a Seattle fan, when I was out at dinner, I saw Seattle fans downtown at 5:30, 5 o'clock. And that match kicks off for them at 7:30, which means all these people who are downtown, unless they're going to like a soccer specific bar or something, they're probably not watching any of those 7:30 Eastern kickoffs. Realistically, they're probably not watching any of the 7:30 Central kickoffs, and they're probably not watching any of the 7:30 Mountain Time kickoffs, and they're probably not watching any of the other 7:30 kickoffs if it's a home match because they're going to be at their pregame, they're going to be at their tailgate doing something. So it makes even less sense to me because as a 7:30 Eastern normal attending time, right? Like I can get out of the match and I can get home in time to catch 10:30 kickoffs. So I can at least get 2 live windows as an East Coast person. But if you're a West Coast person, no way. Not if your
Yeah.
team's home.
And I mean, that's crazy. I guess when you break it down like that too, if like some East Coast games start at 4:30, then yeah, like West Coast definitely isn't watching that. At the fan base at it's at right now, like football wise, going out there visiting my brother in Oregon, like the 1 p.m. games kick off at 10 a.m. there, and it's like, yeah, you finish the primetime games by 8, but you spend 10 to 8 instead of like 1 to 11 for football Sundays, like into it there. So at least like you have like a full half of your Sunday to get things done. But like the 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. window, like that really like takes up your entire day
Yeah.
to an extent. So soccer isn't like that, of course, but yeah, the coast to coast timing windows is definitely, I think, noteworthy when it comes to it.
Yeah. I really don't understand who the schedule is for now, having been in the other extreme, right? I mean, look, there's a ton of people on the West Coast. There's what, like 60, 70, 80 million people living on the West Coast, probably more that I'm blocking out of in my mind. So if you're going to say to those 80 million people, like, sorry, hope you only want to watch, like, if your team's at home, hope you only want to watch your team. Or, hey, I know you had dinner plans at like 5:30 so that you could watch your team at 7:30. Hope you didn't want to watch anything else going on. Like, why make it harder to watch your product?
Yeah. So yeah, that's just a little tangent I actually had in my notes I want to talk about anyways, but you kind of opened up a good window for it. But onto the match on the Atlanta side of things. The Guzan assist was super funny because on a baseball pitch, that's probably the only way he gets an assist like that. So I think that just brings up a perfect run into that. But I mean, we finally got a point on the road. It doesn't come without comfort, though. Jamal Tyree, who has really turned into a really solid backup striker for Atlanta, scored 3 goals in his past 2 games with Yakumakis hurt. Unfortunately, he left the game with injury, and it was announced that he's going to be out the next 2 to 4 weeks. And with our DP center back, Stan Gregerson, who's out right now, our other starting center back, Derek Williams, is now out multiple weeks, and Zande Silva as well is out. So the injury report is really piling up. Right now, that like really top of the table, I think there's about half of the teams, 14 of the 29, are at least 10 points and at most 14. So it's really tight early. And this Atlanta team, through these injuries, they need to stay afloat until they get healthy. They have Philly Sunday. That's not easy. It's home, luckily, where we've been very successful. But Almada really needs to step up, especially now with Silva and Yakimakis and Teddy out. He's been extremely underwhelming this season. And we've talked about it in the offseason. His head's in Europe, but right now it's obviously not in Atlanta. So he needs to figure it out. If he even wants to move in the future, or I'm scared it's going to get ugly for Atlanta and him if he doesn't start to turn it on, because we've seen this road before. We've seen players get frustrated. We've seen Joseph Martinez get frustrated. We've seen Barco get frustrated. I really don't want to go down this road again with our top players and getting frustrated with our front office. We've seen Gonzalez, Perez, Nagby. Yeah, it's just I don't keep the players happy. If he wanted to go, I don't know if the market was calling. It didn't seem like it was, but right now his head's not in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think amazing, like, relevant point to that is the big narrative right now for Atlanta is, they make it hard for Almada to leave, right? Eventually you have to play ball. Otherwise, what upcoming star is going to come to play for your team if this narrative is formed where you're saying, "Oh, come play for us," but if you want to leave, you're stuck here forever. Like, no one's going to sign there.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, that was like, yeah, it's a difficult point. And I think the fan base is divided on it, as they should be, because obviously you want to play good, but when you see clubs like Cincinnati and LA in the past, like taking care of their players and then figuring out after, it seems like the product doesn't drop. So if you take care of your players, these agents more than likely have the same type of players you want or relationships with other agents that are similar. And it seems like you want to keep that well going. I'm not saying Almada had great offers. I don't think you can take 10 million for him like some of it was offered, but if it's in the realm of, I think they said 30 plus. If it's 20 plus with some add-ons, I feel like you got to do him right if he wants the move. So this window I think is going to be big, but I really think for him personally, he needs to figure out his own play too, because the Olympics are coming up, and he needs to have a strong couple months beforehand for Atlanta to get some momentum heading into that, because that's when his name on the Argentina jersey is going to be back in the light. So this window is going to be his way to move. If not, I'm nervous about what's to follow.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. There's going to be some really interesting summer moves. Almada is just like one on a increasingly long list of players that I'm quite interested to see as to what's going on with them. Which, on that note, Cucho.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah, another player who I would be very interested to see if he sticks around past summer, especially given the recent drama unfolding, quote unquote, team policy. I believe finally the drama is coming to a close, but I mean, what does the relationship look like behind closed doors? Does the player and the coach have a way forward? Is there reconciliation there? Are they just biding their time saying, you know what, let's just get through these next couple months and we'll move you on. Doesn't matter as long as we get like a reasonable price for you, as long as we recoup our cost. We don't know. I mean, there's no transparency in MLS. We're about as transparent as a block of mud, but anyways, point being, Cucho's on that list. There's questions there. Honestly, Wilfred Nancy, I think, just in general, I don't know how long he's going to be with Columbus either. I think there are some pretty good teams in Europe that have to be looking at this guy and saying, if we have a coaching vacancy, maybe we approach him. So, yeah, not to say that Nancy's going to leave right now, but if anyone from MLS was, he'd be my pick.
Yeah, there's definitely something going on between Nancy and Cucho, or just the team in general. The frustration that he showed on the field in this past game, definitely you could tell something's been building up in those 2 weeks he's been out. And I always compare, not in the sense of the type of player they are, but the type of situation they are at the age they came to MLS. Cucho and Joseph coming from Torino and Watford, the age they came and how they became into big stars. Joseph wasn't really a player that was looking abroad afterwards. Cucho definitely, I feel like, would take the right opportunity for the right price. I feel like he's not saying MLS is my home, but another similarity, Nancy, for the time being, and Tata, I feel like both of those managers can really handle personalities. Like Joseph and Tata, Joseph went out with every manager, but the only one that really came out on top was Tata. Everyone else, DeBoer, Heinze, to a sense, Pineda there at the end. It feels like Joseph always came out on top, but Tata was someone that could always get him through that. Really could punish him in a way to get that respect back, and he came back out on the field. And maybe this is a window that Nancy and Cucho are doing that. Maybe it's just got to be a weird setback. But you're right. Maybe both of their minds are thinking about what their next steps are too, and if they want to get there for the right opportunity, they got to keep relying on each other, because the team finds success when they're on the right page together.
Yeah, well, this specific match, the team found success to a certain extent without Cucho on the field. He gets sent off with a red card, and then Aiden Morris finds that equalizing goal. DC United had been leading 1-0. Yeah, I mean, Aiden Morris is a guy that won't be. Yeah, he's not going to be in MLS forever. I don't know for how long he will be, but he's got a bright future as well.
I just hope for players like him that he gets the right move. Sometimes you get nervous when they go to those like bottom half tier Serie A teams, for example. Like Tanner Tessman, Aiden Morris is way better than what Tessman is when he left FC Dallas, but I don't even know where Tessman is right now. Maybe he's still over in Italy, but I hope he's not one of those players. He's a really good spot. I hope he finds a really good home if he does choose to leave. And right now he just stands out so well. What a strike that was.
Yeah. I was reminded today that Brenner, who went to Udinese in Serie A, right now they are sitting in 15th in Serie A, and they are barely ahead of the relegation zone. They're 2 points clear of relegation. It's a one match buffer. So
It's the same with not to a player that Brenner is, but George Bello as well. When he left Atlanta, he really wanted that European move, and he went to Armenia Benfield, and they got relegated, and then he stayed with them in the second division, and then they got relegated into the third division the next year. So now he's kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere in Europe, and he's a player that I feel like will definitely come back to MLS at one point. But when he was with Atlanta, everyone was talking about him being maybe like the next incoming like left back that the U.S. men's team needs, a natural left back behind Anthony Robinson that we haven't had. And now, where is Bello nowadays? Now it's Caleb Wiley that everyone likes to talk about. So you got to make the right move when it comes to Europe. It's not just the entity takes you to the next level.
yeah. Well, hey, moving over to DC United a little bit, Troy Lesesne continues to honestly impress me. I mean, Columbus are a really good team. Again, playoff favorites, I would say. DC United, I didn't have much in the way of expectations for them at the start of this year. Christian Benteke has been a consistent goal scorer under Lesesne. I mean, even better than he was under Rooney, I would say. Now, granted, Rooney was and I think still is not a good coach, but I mean, it's a very different look for DC United on largely some pretty similar players to last season. So,
Yeah,
feather in Lesesne's cap.
I mean, DC United is grinding and I'm happy for Lesesne because the situation he left, they're doing really, really well as well. But I'm really happy for him right now because this is no offense to Aaron Herrera and Jared Stroud. Like, they were great players for St. Louis and Herrera for Montreal and Real Salt Lake, but those were the biggest offseason moves the club made. And so when you think a 12-place club, what those two players bring in, like, you probably think, okay, around 10 or 11th. And obviously it's still very, very early in the season. Things could change, but to grind a road result to the MLS Cup chance last year, it's very impressive, and they've been fighting all year. I know Kucha had a red card, but they're finding results right now. I think they've always called Saints teams like bully ball, and maybe that's what they have to do. You have Benteke, 5 goals, and he has the highest expected goals in the league right now at 6.45. So he's being put in the right positions to score, and if he can keep it up, Herrera 3 assists, Stroud has a goal, so the two contributors have done well as well. So we'll see if they can continue what they're doing, but definitely like that road result for them this week.
Yeah, if the season ended today, DC United would make the play-in of the playoffs, and they would be the hosting team between the 8-9 seeds. So,
and before the year, would you say, like, is that their ceiling, or do you even think that they're just a playoff miss in general?
I would not have put them in the playoffs prior to the season. I would have put them probably down where Nashville and NYCFC are, if I'm being honest. So they're vastly overperforming my early season expectations.
Yeah, likewise. I definitely did not have them in a single-digit seed heading into this year.
Yeah, so good on them. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about Cincinnati versus New York Red Bulls. Cincinnati losing 1-2, losing at home at that. This is first time in a while that they've lost at home. First loss of the season for them to New York Red Bulls, who, this is weird, right? New York Red Bulls were like an unwatchable team last year. Like, unwatchable in the sense of you didn't want to watch them. And I would argue you still maybe don't want to watch them, but honestly, they are a lot more skillful this year as well. Last year they were just a physical team. They were scrappy. They committed a lot of fouls and they never got called on them. And you're just like, this sucks. I hate this. They still do some of that, but now they actually have quality players to back that up with.
Yeah, Lesesne, I was going to say, like, when he was coaching them, Lewis Morgan was out with an injury all last year. Van Zier, like, had the off-the-field stuff. Forsberg wasn't there. So that's your 3 top offensive players already in the mix, and you see Morgan 6 goals, Van Zier 6 assists. Forsberg looking well. And Frankie Maya, Frankie Maya from Cincinnati, he looks really, really strong in the middle of the field for them this year from when I've been able to catch the Red Bulls. So very impressed by them so far. Like it's one of those things where there's some teams that are overperforming, and I'm still not sold yet. A road win over Cincy, I should be hyping them up, but like we'll see as the season goes. It's a grind. When you bring Leagues Cup into things, we'll see how teams adjust to that first half, second half of the year. But pretty impressed by Red Bulls to start for sure. And the Cincy side of things, when the Corey Barrett signing occurred in the offseason, I really wasn't a big fan of that fit, and I think I made it known to the MLS Now community. Now it really seems like Cincy might be trying new outlets to where that second striker is, or new formations to figure out what fits the team best. How do you feel about Cincy's attacking third right now?
Dire situation for Cincinnati fans. I think you can make the argument that, they've got 5 new starters. Okay, well, here's the thing. None of these guys, other than Robinson, are really performing all that well. I mean, they put in Kubo as a second striker. Kubo has not seen that position since he first signed with Cincinnati. He has been a midfielder. He's been a left back. He's been a right back. He's been everything other than the position that he was initially being brought in as, is that attacking type player to play as like a winger second striker.
I was going to say he played left back and right back like earlier this year, right? And now they're already trying to back out at second striker.
Well, I mean, and very obviously it worked because he scored. He was the lone goal scorer for Cincinnati. I celebrated that one immensely before then immediately walking out of the hotel room to go get dinner on the East Coast. So, for me, that was a great way to start the match. And then I didn't have to watch the first and second goals live for Red Bulls. I don't know what's going on with Cincinnati, though. I mean, the midfield is not strong for them. The attacking trio is not strong for them. Their defense has been keeping them in a lot of games that they really had no right to be in. And I don't know. I think this is regression to the mean for them. As they are performing right now, I would say sitting in 5th place at the moment seems about right. They can't score goals. I mean, that's you need to be able, like, they have 7 goals scored this season.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like bottom 5 or 6 in the league. Yeah, they're tied with Atlanta for the least amount of goals against this year, but they're only up at a +2 point goal differential right now, so that's not ideal. And I mean, what Acosta has 2, Bupenza has 2, I believe, right? And then the other 3 come from like Kubo and a couple. Did Bear get one earlier in the year?
I don't think Bear's got an MLS one yet. I think he almost had one and they took it away, or maybe he has one. But I think Baird scored in CONCACAF.
Yeah, I just didn't like the fit when it came to what they had last year with Vasquez. And I'm always hesitant on players that are up and down in careers, and then they turn it on and when it's their contract year. Like that always scares me. Always. Maybe it's because Derek Etienne is a great movement of that theory with Atlanta, where he had a career year for the Red Bulls and then came to Atlanta on a long-term contract, and now he's the 6th choice winger on the team. Like that's hopefully he doesn't get to that point for Barrett. I'm not like shining that to happen. I hope he works out, but I just didn't like that fit. But I do think Cincinnati still has time, if it's not going to be this window in the summer, to figure that out. And they still have only lost. That's their only loss this season. So, like, if they can just keep it to that point, if they lower to the mean and they end up being a top 4 to 5 team in the conference, like it's
still making the playoffs.
Still making the playoffs and a good chance to host the first round. So, like, that's not a bad place to be if you're gonna revert to the mean in a way.
Yeah, I'm not yet ready to hit the panic button for Cincinnati, but I am getting increasingly worried. So I need to start seeing some sort of gel for that team, because right now it doesn't seem like they could string more than 2 or 3 passes together at any given time. There's a lot of individual sort of attempts at brilliance going on. There's very speculative passing, and that tells me that people on this team either don't trust their teammates or they don't understand how their teammates play yet. And neither one of those is good for different reasons.
Well, you're at Montreal this weekend, so that is
Yeah, thank
a pretty
goodness.
solid place to have. If you have to have a road game, that's a good place to have it to try to figure it out. So new
Yeah.
week ahead for them for sure.
Hey, I don't want to, talk too much about teams that I don't mind facing in Canada, but we do have two Canadian teams as our next topic here. We got Vancouver against Toronto. Vancouver, huge 4-0 win. Obviously, Sartini is back. He's the man. It's instant impact. I think this is 2 Sartini performances and 2 wins since he has returned from his long-term suspension. Toronto, again, we had some concerns on some previous recordings of what do Toronto look like when Insigne is out? What do Toronto look like later on down the stretch? And they're starting to look different now. So they started off very, very strong. They've fallen back a little bit. So now I don't know if that is a Herdman issue. I don't know if this is a player availability issue. There's a lot of moving pieces here of what could be your explanation, if you will.
If Toronto finishes around the range they're at right now, the 7 seed to not, if they make the playoffs, I feel like that's a pretty solid year for Herdman. I'm curious to see Herdman when he starts to put his own team together in year 2. Maybe it starts this summer, but I really don't know how to feel about them right now, as you guys have talked about in the past. And on the Vancouver side of things, Sartini ball, I like what I'm seeing for sure. Big proponent of that. And what I like about Sartini is after the game, he noted that they've had one of the easiest schedules in MLS out of all the teams so far. So harder schedule ahead for them. I believe next week they play against. Let me just come for. They play home against the Galaxy, so that's a big test to your home there. The way the Galaxy have been playing, so if they can get 3 points there, Sartini ball can continue on this pod for sure. Weeks to come.
I think Sartini ball is going to continue on this pod regardless of the outcome against Galaxy. But I will say, extremely encouraging to have 4 different goal scorers for Vancouver in this one. I think one of the big questions I had going into this season, can Gauld and Brian White lead this team to victory? Because it's felt like consistently in the past, if you're not getting stellar production from one, if not both of them, Vancouver are not winning. This is one where you had Gauld scored, White scored. You had Fapa Picault, who is seemingly finding a new streak of scoring now. He keeps scoring on tons of different teams. You had Veselinovic scoring on this one. Again, it's just different names on the score sheet. It tells me there's opportunities there. It tells me that players are buying into the system. They understand the identity being asked of them. It's a really good sign. Vancouver sit on top of the West right now. And not just like top 4. They sit in first place in the West. That's phenomenal. I'm extremely happy for this Vancouver side.
Yeah. And before this 4-0 win, Gauld and White have actually been pretty quiet this season so far. So just to see where they're at right now without those two being the key contributors, that's important. Like I said, they're home against the Galaxy. Then after they're at Seattle. Seattle hasn't been what they are, but they did have a 5-0 win recently. So maybe they're going to see a good Seattle team. Then after that, they're at the Red Bulls. So like the month of April is really important for them to continue their stride to see if they can remain at the top of the West.
Yeah, at Red Bulls will be a test for sure. Galaxy at home will be a test as well. I'm gonna tell you right now, I can't predict what's going on with that one. That Vancouver have been so inconsistent at BC Place this season. I think I'll lean Galaxy just because of that alone. But
I will too, just because I can't see the Galaxy losing 2 in a row, even though they're both road games. I think at worst outcome it's going to be a draw. But I would lean Galaxy if I had to pick a winner so far.
Yep. All right, let's move on to talking a little bit about New England and Charlotte. Caleb Porter, first win as a New England coach in MLS. It's a 1-0 win over Charlotte. I was just talking on the last episode about how Dean Smith, the quality of his coaching was going to like overwhelm teams and going to get Charlotte a lot of nice results on the backs of largely the same players and not having these huge identities. And then they lose to New England, who I would call potentially up to this point the worst team in the East. And from a standings point, that bears out considering even with this win, they are still last in the East. Rough game, personally, for Charlotte. I don't know if I put much stock in this, though, if I'm being honest. I mean, Charlotte have performed pretty impressively leading up to this season. So, leading up to this point in the season, and New England have performed pretty poorly leading up to this season. So, I mean, like, is this just like the one-off weird results that happen in MLS where a favored team loses to a team they would normally not lose to? Maybe. Is it Caleb Porter's finally getting buy-in from the players? Maybe. I don't know. I hope not.
Probably not, but
Yeah.
maybe. I think Charlotte. I think Dean Smith is a very good coach, but I really think that Charlotte needs a creator, a number 10, really, really bad. Like you see the best teams in the league: Acosta, Almada,
Ricky
Zelarayan until
Puig,
then, Puig, but now you have Diego Rossi there. Like you need a number 10. I mean,
Brian White, Brian Gall.
Lionel Messi. Like
Yeah, Lionel Messi.
It's they need
Dang
a
it, we
number
said
10.
it again. We said he who shall not be named, Bryce.
Yep, we did.
Hey, look at that. We did another 36 minutes not mentioning his name.
Yeah, before we got to his game. But yeah, like Bouanga, like the scheme of things, like they don't have a natural creator right now. And like they have like that weird like Copetti, like I don't like highly regarded signing coming in. I really can't figure out what his best part of his game is though. Is it scoring? Is it being like that secondary guy? Like they need a creator, and I think that's at the forefront of their summer window for sure to see if they can elevate to being a playoff team, maybe even fighting to get out of that first round to get into that top 7 for a bye. So that they need a creator bad.
Yeah. I don't know what the future looks like for New England, personally. Because I don't know what they can do to improve in the sense of like you have Carl Seal, former MVP, very creative player. We've seen a long track record of success for him year over year. I think really this might just come down to a coaching issue. I don't think either of us were big fans of the Porter hire. I don't think the fans have been very receptive to Porter either. Certainly the opening stretch of matches will not have helped with that. Personally, I don't understand this one. I don't know what they thought they were doing. Like what sort of 4D chess New England thought they were playing on this one.
Quick question for you, because it was brought up in extra time today. Do you think that having goalkeepers at the level of Matt Turner and Petrovic hid like a lot of issues within New England, or do you think it doesn't really extend that far?
I don't think it extends that far personally. I mean, it helps, right? Like I think the close matches, right? When they set these point records for the single season, like those types of performances are from having really good goalkeepers that let you win matches that you might otherwise draw or draw matches you might otherwise lose. But I don't think it's such an outsized impact that it makes a team go from being like, say, mid-table to supporter shield winner. Like it helps, right? It pushes you a little bit. It gives you some variance, but it's not the thing that like puts them over the top.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I was just curious to see your point on that. Like you said, I think it pushes you from maybe 7th to 5th, kind of like they were last year, or like 8th to 5th, but I don't think it changes you from 15th in the East to top 6. So,
yeah,
coaching issue for sure, and it's just a locker room that struggled with like buy-in since everything that happened last year. So I really don't think getting a coach that was around the league for as long as he was with 2 different clubs beforehand was the best pull just to change the vibes in the locker room.
Yeah. To your point though, I don't know if there's any coach that you'd hire in for where the locker room is right now that would be a big win as far as hiring goes, right? I mean, I think there's a clearly broken trust between the locker room and the front office right now. I think there's a broken trust between the front office and the fans as well, for that matter, and a lot of broken trust all around. But whoever they hired may not have been faring any better.
So I feel like the best way to do it is when you do get the next coach after, you also just have to sweep the roster. You just have to start everything over. You can't kind of keep the same guys that were there last year and put the new coach in. I think you just got to entirely get a new squad in there, from head coach to your signings.
That's easier said than done, Bryce.
Oh, for sure. Seeing how difficult it was to, and it still is, to move players that you want to move out, it's a tough market. It's not, they don't have the transfer portal where they can just drop in and move on. They're gonna keep their side of the contract, the players. So
No. All right, well, hey, let's talk about El Tráfico, the maybe a highlight match of the weekend. LAFC 2-1 win over Galaxy. I actually picked Galaxy to win this one on some of the bets that I did this weekend. A horrible weekend for bets, by the way. I lost every single one of them, and I don't feel good about that. But this was such a weird weekend for almost every single result. So I'm not going to read into it too much. This happens in MLS sometimes. But LAFC 2-1 win over Galaxy. For me, this has maybe been a regression to the mean type thing for LAFC. I had a lot of questions going into the season. They let a lot of players go. They had a lot of identity that they did not have return. And yet, now you look at the standings, they're right next to Galaxy. I mean, they are in 5th place of the standings. They're 2 points behind Galaxy. I mean, it's a one-match difference. It's a one-match difference between them and Vancouver as well. Like, a win sends them potentially top of the table if other results go well for them. So they were a good team last year. They had struggles at the start, and now they're returning back to being a good team. So maybe I was too nervous about what they were losing. I don't think I have anything negative to say about Galaxy, though. LAFC played really well. They're a good side. They're better than we all expected. Galaxy is still a good side. Losing this does not make them bad.
it's funny because in terms of El Tráfico, like, this is one of the most I was looking forward to since the past couple of years. Like, both teams, the Galaxy look to be very enough relevant again. LAFC, not the start that LAFC is used to, but still a very solid team. And this one didn't turn into the 7-goal El Tráfico games we're used to. But, like, in terms of that, it was still a pretty solid match to appreciate. LAFC, yeah, like, in terms of their team as a whole, I really don't know where I stand on them right now. It's one of those teams that, if you think back to their MLS Cup run, they had Gareth Bale and Cellini coming off the bench. Like, they had a solid starting 11. You can't pull that off every year, of course, but matter of fact, they're just trying to replace that. And a lot of their young signings they had really didn't turn out the way that they were hoping in this next wave. So I really think the top end isn't really there with Buwanga right now, but the depth isn't also there. So obviously there's the rumored signing coming in the summer, but I really think they need to try to build that back end of that roster a little bit more. In terms of Galaxy, I agree with you completely. Not worried about them at all. Gabriel Peck and Payne still have been magnificent additions to Puig and Joveljic. It's been a really, really fun quartet attack to follow, and Delgado as well with 4 assists. So I'm not worried about them either. The Galaxy, I think, are going to finish as a top 4 team in the West this year.
I agree. Honestly, I could see LAFC finishing in a top 4 spot, but it, in my mind, would probably be that 4th slot.
So who do you have as the other 2 right now?
Vancouver and Galaxy, I think, finish top 3. And I have to say, like, I'm kind of waffling. Like, I don't know what's going to go on down the stretch, right? Like, Salt Lake, we thought was going to be for real last year, and then they faded post Leagues Cup. Minnesota, has this Reynoso situation going on again that we'll talk about in a later part of the show. But they found success without Reynoso last year. He came back and they started losing and slipping. And, they got rid of Adrian Heath in the offseason or towards the end of the season. It's like they have a new coach. They're doing pretty well. They're in fourth right now, but it's early. So I don't know. It's hard for me to figure out who's going to be that fourth one. But
for me right now, RSL and Houston are kind of the ones I'm pinpointing on. I'm not worried about Houston. RSL obviously is there right now, and Arango is having an MVP type year to start. Like, he's been such a joy to have back in MLS. But I also wouldn't count out. I know they're 12th right now, but I can't count out Seattle. They've only played 6 games. They just won 5-0. Maybe they need to save some of those for the games incoming, but I'm not going to count them out to have a better last 3 quarters of the year compared to how their first quarter went. So, yeah, I'm curious. I think I agree. Galaxy, Vancouver, more than likely, yes. LAFC. The West, it's just crazy. The East, we would have a whole different conversation about this. Like, I could see 8 teams finishing in the top 4 potentially. Maybe not 8, probably 6, but it's just such a more strong conference from 5 to 9 versus the West.
yeah. Hey, parity league, right? Maybe it's not parity between East and West, but within it, parity league.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I don't know if I have anything else to say El Trafico wise. Shall we move on to our next match, which is?
That was not a pen. Luongo went down super easy. That's all I have to say.
Look, there's penalty discussion on social media has been insane across not just MLS, but even like some European competition. So weird week for PKs just all around.
Yeah, like I had to talk with Joe about like the NYCFC one going down. Like both that one and the Buanga had VAR enough to say, hey, you actually you got to take a look at this better at slow mo. And both situations, the ref stuck with it, and like respect to them. Like it's tough. Like
yeah,
it's easy to counter it, but like it's tough.
I'm okay with a referee sticking with their call when it is a highly judgmental call reliant on looking at slow-mo. Because to me, if you have to look at slow-mo and you have to send them to the monitor and you had to have another person really like take a look to inspect it, I'm not sure if that falls under quote clear and obvious quote. Because at that point, it's like you had to get all this extra technology to be able to even see what went on. And like in the heat of the moment in the match, that's like realistically probably fine. Maybe not factually fine, but for the threshold of clear and obvious, it's probably fine.
Yeah, that's fair. And I agree with you, but it's funny to see when the fan base's team that's affected negatively on that, then they're like, why have the technology in the first place? But it's also the same fan bases complaining that there's 15 minutes of extra time or VAR is taken away from the game. So you can't have it both ways. So
no, absolutely not.
I agree.
But it won't stop us for demanding to have it both ways. I want my cake and I want to eat it too. So
for sure.
All right. Hey, we're going to talk about the hottest topic right now. Gary Smith out, ? Nashville, it's a 1-2 loss to Philly. They were leading and then threw it away. Again, Philly comeback win, still undefeated. I think they're actually the only undefeated team in the East. Yep, only undefeated team in the East as we sit here recording this. It's not looking good for Nashville.
Nashville went to the local sporting goods store. They grabbed the Gary ball. They're staying away from the Sartini ball because you can't get through international customs like that. But they got Gary ball. They didn't see that there's a big expiration date on it. And that expiration date is not in 2024 because it was in 2023. Gary Ball, it's time to take him out. Nashville has to move on for sure.
Yeah, I don't see how you can continue to go from what was I think, an energetic, passionate place where like Nashville was must-watch soccer for a hot minute there. Now, granted, it was must-watch because Hani Mukhtar was on like insane MVP form for like 2 years straight, but now that Hani Mukhtar is not on insane MVP form for like a third or fourth year, they're not a team that I look at and say, "Ooh, got to worry about them." Like they're just not.
Yeah. It's crazy to think how far they made it in League's Cup last year and then just plummeted completely. Like it's not fun to watch. Like you said, it's the atmosphere. Watching games like home games for Nashville, like it was must watch if you could, as us 7:30 Eastern time folks could. But it's not fun, and it's time to move on. And we're preaching to the choir when it comes to Nashville fans listening to us talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine most of them are probably sitting there being like, "Yes, Gary out, please." So not just some, not all. I won't say that we speak for everyone, but it does feel like that's the sentiment on social media as well. So, hey, Philly side though,
Yeah.
undefeated team. It's big. It's huge. Even
Last one left, right?
yeah, I mean, only one left in the East, and there's none left in the West. So yes, you're right. They're the last undefeated team in the entire league, which just it blows me away how consistently good Philly have been.
They've been kind of quiet, like to have
Yeah,
this so far too. Like Carranza's healthy again. Like I said, Atlanta hosts them next Sunday at 2:30. Like I finally can watch like MLS 360 and enjoy Saturday. But Philly Sunday, I don't know how much I'm going to enjoy it, even though it's a home game. We have four starters out, and it looked like our third choice striker is Derek Etienne, and which is insane. So I'm not ready to watch it. Carranza looks incredible back from injury, and Philly looks to be their well-oiled machine. They keep those guys. They bring more up through the academy when they sell the next one to a Big Five club, and
yeah. When
they're
they're
so
signing
consistent.
with Manchester City as like a 14-year-old on like a pre-con, yeah, insane.
I
I
love
don't.
their academy. Their academy complex is great. It's right next to the stadium. It's funny because it's in a terrible part near the city, but like for some reason, right that stadium and that academy complex right by the Delaware River there and the bridge is beautiful. So I enjoy seeing games there. I need to go when Atlanta isn't on the road because Philly fans are crazy. Like I can't wait to just go enjoy the game and hide in the crowd. But that really fun team. Andre Blake, when he plays Atlanta, basically any team in the East turns out to be one of the best goalkeepers in the league in this past 5-10 years. So it they're looking good, and they've been kind of quiet doing so.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you had told me that they were in second place prior to me looking at the standings, I'd be like, second place. I'd be like, oh, they were doing well this season. I didn't know they were in second place though. Like, it's been very under the radar, which kind of weird, if I'm being honest, because I feel like there was a lot more in the way of talking points and hubbub and hype and all that in prior years. So very odd. Maybe it's because there's more focus on like Cincinnati, Columbus, and the sort of weird going ons right now between those two teams. So it could be that Philly just doesn't get into the news cycle because of other stories.
Yeah, and I think they started their CONCACAF run in a really bad light. Um, so yeah, I think they kind of fell under the radar in the league. You have he who shall not be named injured, and in the East, and the Almada off season, and the Red Bulls surprising people in the other direction. So you just kind of and New England going in the other direction as that core top six in the league last year. I guess Nashville is another team that kind of like fell out of that favor, but Philly, Columbus, Cincy, and Atlanta were all a part of that core, and you see them still in that mix in the early beginnings. So like the Red Bull are the surprise team. Miami, everyone expected them to be there. Orlando and New England and Nashville, everyone wants to talk about like falling down. So there's no reason to talk about Philly, I guess, but maybe we should start talking about them because they're very well in the Shield race early on, being undefeated with a game in hand from the rest of the league, pretty much.
Yeah, I truly like a testament to Jim Curtin. I don't know if Jim Curtin is at a point that he'll get called to Europe, though. Personally,
No.
I don't think there's enough hubbub about him, which is it's weird because I'm pretty sure he's not that much older than Wilfred Nancy, if older at all. I think they're pretty close in age, so
Hey,
very weird.
I think he
Yeah,
enjoys it. Like, there's no reason for him to stop what he's doing with what he has there right now.
that's true. Yeah, I mean, when you get that level of success and that level of trust, you'd have to get a really good opportunity to give that up. So, hey, speaking of a good opportunity, Bryce, I want to talk about this good opportunity that I wasted this weekend. I have bet on Chicago to win because of my unwavering faith in Chicago every single week prior to this one. And this is the week that Chicago gets that win to finally prove me wrong that I have no idea what I'm doing in my life. Granted, this is their second win of the season, but it's like I kept believing that they were gonna win, and they just kept getting draws or losses. And it's like the one time I'm like, I'm not touching that because I think Houston's gonna win. Chicago go and get a win. So betting curse, obviously. That said, I actually want to just ask you, Chicago? Question mark? Like, I don't even know how to phrase it. They're such a weird team. You know, they got Kellen Acosta, who was arguably second or third biggest free agent of the season. They got Andrew Gutman, who was immediately, injured first match of the season, but valuable ad nonetheless. They had Shaqiri. They've had a few other, player ads as well. They're good attacking players. They've had Gutierrez, added Hugo Kuipers. All of these things tell me they should be a good team on paper, and they're sitting in the 10th.
10th,
Yeah. I don't know.
I
don't know what's going on with them.
The thing is, I feel like Shaqiri is very inconsistent. Like in this 2-1 win, he accounted for both goals with a goal and an assist. But are we going to see it next game? Did we see it the game before? That's why you can't Shaqiri is basically the definition of the Chicago team. I really don't know what to expect. Brian Gutierrez came in off the bench, great goal. But yeah, Chris Brady is also a great young goalkeeper, but I really don't know what to expect from them either. It's a team that you feel like on paper could be top 7,
Yeah.
In that 6 or 7 spot, maybe in the East. But the way that the teams like Orlando, New England fell so fast, that really opens up that window for them becoming that team. But right now, I feel like they really can't do it. They had that Atlanta game on the road that was just way out of their favor early. But this one, they win against a darn good team in the West. So I don't know. Who do they play next week? Let me see. This is going to be a big test for them. They play Chicago. They play at the Red Bulls. So if you want to buy into this
match. I'm not betting on Chicago to beat the Red Bulls this weekend. Which means of course they will win.
And maybe that's what the Red Bulls need to win is you not betting on them. So yeah. If Shaqiri comes out with another goal and assist and they win, that's what they need. They need him to step up completely.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sport of relatively low margins. If you score 2 goals, even if you're not winning all the time, you're probably not losing all that often either. So, yeah, anyways, our wonderful Chicago correspondent, Tim, wrote in a little bit about the Chicago Fire win as well. Tim says, Fire get their second win thanks to a Shaq penalty off what Matt Doyle called the most brain-dead foul I have seen in MLS this season, as well as a perfectly weighted pass from Shaq to Brian Gutierrez. It is sent over Steve Clark's head for a stunner of a goal, but careless back pass from Herbers ruined the party, gifted the Dynamo a goal. And now they're facing league-leading New York Red Bulls, and the question becomes, can the Fire have one, the number one game where no individual mistakes cost them and where big names give big performances? And I emphatically say, no, Tim. No, they cannot. I don't believe that is the Chicago team that we've seen this season, and I have no reason to believe that that's going to be the case going forward. So,
it's funny because your comment from that just has me on a totally unrelated thing, which we're really good at. But U.S. women's national team beat Canada in penalties in the She Believes Cup final today. So
excellent.
That happened during the start of our recording. But reason why that reminded me is because Tim covers the women's game as well very well. So yeah, we'll see if he has more wins to cover as the season goes on. But
I think he will. I don't think it's going to be this weekend.
So what do you think? Do you think Chicago's going to make the playoffs as of right now?
On paper, they should make the playoffs. I have no idea if they are going to be consistent enough to make the playoffs.
Because it's so early, but right now, Charlotte and them are tied for 9th, but Charlotte has a better goal differential, so they have that 9 spot. But it doesn't mean anything right now.
I would lean Charlotte if I had to pick between those two teams. And I solely say that because I think Dean Smith is a better coach than Frank Klopas.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think across 34-game season, it's going to matter. It's going to make a difference.
Yeah. So we'll see.
We will see. Houston's side of things, it's kind of weird for Houston this year because they had such a unexpectedly good season last year. And now we get to this season and you look at them and they're firmly middle table, which is still respectable, right? 6th place. They're on 10 points. They have a game in hand over quite a number of teams ahead of them. Not the worst thing in the world. However, maybe I would have expected more from them, right? This is a year extra under Olsen. I would expect them to take a step forward. Yes, they lost Corey Baird, and maybe that doesn't seem like it's that much of a loss now in hindsight because maybe he just had a career year last year. But, they've retained Coco. I think Herrera is still injured, I want to say. I'm not sure if he's right back into the field yet. But point being, I would have expected at least positive momentum from Houston. And it doesn't feel like they've got positive momentum. I'm not sure if they necessarily have negative momentum. I'm not sure if I would have expected them to be in 6th at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, just to confirm, you're right. Hector has not played an MLS game this season for them, and they just haven't found it up top yet so far. They had Bossi as their starting striker, and that's not really found success with Bossi last year. They had him successful on that left flank, kind of filling in with Baird there. But
yeah,
Coco's looked great this year. I definitely want to give him his flowers still. And Latif Blessing's there for Houston this year, and he's definitely a percentage of what he was at when he was with LA. But they need Hector back, and they need to figure out their 9 position for sure. They need to figure out who's going to get them their goals because right now they're not having a goal scorer. The same. We're having the talks with Baird right now of how they need to figure out their attacking third. The team that Baird left also needs to figure it out. Maybe they can just trade him back. Maybe that'll solve all. They can get some. Cincinnati will get good GAM. They can sign somebody new from out of the league, and
I don't know, man. The insane thing here is that Cincinnati and Houston are in this weird spot where Cincinnati 5th place, Houston 6th place. Cincinnati 7 goals forced, 5 allowed. Houston 7 goals forced, 6 allowed. Both have 3 wins. Both have, well, no, sorry, not both. One has 1 loss, one has 2 losses. Cincinnati has 2 more draws than Houston. They've played 1 more game than Houston, though. So
do you think both teams are just receiving early, reverting to the mean, having a second tournament to play in type? issues to start?
I don't know if I'm being quite honest, because neither one of them are in CONCACAF now, and both of them
Yeah.
actually I think started quite well initially. Like they were doing better at the start of the season when they had both tournaments to play in, and now they're kind of sliding a little bit. So yeah, weird things going on in Houston. I don't have an answer for it right now.
We're at such an exploratory phase of the season so far where we're talking about what we've seen, but we can't really come up with good predictions yet with trends. Like I really can't figure out Houston. I can't figure out Cincinnati. I can't figure out Orlando, New England to an extent. Like it's a month in. Like we'll see a month from now. I think we can really get a good idea of how we're going to see the table start to unfold. Like
Yeah.
in tiers, not position, but tiers. I think you're going to see these are the teams fighting for home field advantage. These are the teams that are fighting to make the playoffs. These are the teams that are fighting not to finish last.
Yeah.
Like it's so we can't really see that right now. It's so tight. Like we said, the top half of the league is 10 to 14 points. So
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. I'd give it, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 more matches for every single team before we'd start to draw any real significant conclusions, except for Nashville. Gary needs to go. So, all right. Hey, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about a true, actual, proper fun match, right? We talked about how El Trafico. My apologies. This is, it's not as good as El Clasico. We talked about how El Trafico wasn't a 7-goal banger of a match. Well, Austin versus San Jose was a 7-goal banger of a match. 4-3 win for Austin. The latest late winner I recall seeing so far, with like the 90 plus 11 goal for Austin. Here's my big thing though. Neither of these clubs excite me from this result. I don't look at San Jose and be like, oh, it's all falling apart for them, because they were already the worst team in the West going into this. And I don't look at Austin winning because, like, good job, you beat San Jose, who's the worst team in the West, but also you've looked super inconsistent throughout most of the season doing it. So, like, you've turned a little bit, but what the rest of the season says is just, I think this is a blip. Although, granted, a 4-goal win is, blip or not, it's exciting. So,
yeah, I mean, Jerussi with 2 second half goals, that's exciting within itself. He had a down 2023. If Austin's going to get back to any form that they had in 22, it's going to have to come from him leading the way. So that's something you get excited about. This game was goals, come and get your goals. But yeah, like you said, neither one of these teams really. San Jose's already in a massive bunker to start the year. Like that's not a place you want to be. I can't see them coming out of it. Like there's nothing from this that does. I don't care if they scored 3 road goals. Austin, the only thing that excites me from them and Jersey scoring 2 goals is their goal celebration with the full green field, is like just the green lights.
Pretty cool.
It gives me chills. Like that's my takeaway from it, is seeing the celebration there in the 101st minute or whatever it came in stoppage time of that. Yeah, but neither team, in my opinion, Austin will fight for the playoffs, but if they made it, their run will be cut very short. Like we're gonna have conversations we did last offseason. It's only gonna be heightened about Josh Wolf coaching. Like it is what it is.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on San Jose wise. I mean, they've allowed 17 goals in 7 matches, which is insane. I'm not sure if you've thought to do the math on that, but they're allowing more than 2 goals per match right now as an average.
I think that's all you need to know about their season so far.
Yeah, they have bear with me here, Bryce. They have a single solitary win. They have 0 draws. They have 6 losses. They've played 7 matches, 6 losses. I mean, we talk about how Gary needs to go. I mean, does Lucci Gonzalez need to go? for San Jose? Like, what did we change here? Like, is this a player issue? Is this it's just a down year? Is everyone having like an underperformance at the same time type of thing? I don't know if it's that people have figured out San Jose, although granted, San Jose seems to love to play the most difficult style of soccer possible. And so when they score goals, they tend to be bangers, but it's a when they score goals. Uh, and then the qualifier is, how many matches have gone by since they last won with any of those goals?
Yeah, I feel like San Jose, it comes from something from front office's decision in players. Espinoza, 4 assists, 5 points so far in 7 games. He's doing his part, but there's not anything connecting on the back half of the field for them. And there's just not really anything exciting from their player acquisition standpoint. Like there's like Obisi, I can't say it. Besides him and Espinoza, what's there to be excited about this team?
I don't know. How many losses can they rack up? Can they set a record for most losses in a season?
I mean, definitely clear favorites for Wooden Spoon at this point because you see all the other teams around them at 5 points and below: Seattle, Orlando, New England. I don't know, Dallas. I don't know.
I could see Dallas being in the conversation.
Yeah, Dallas for sure. Montreal is probably my third one in that mix.
Yeah. Here's my other thing. It's not like they've had the toughest schedule in the league. They've played Dallas, who are barely ahead of them. They've played LA Galaxy. That's a good team. They've played Vancouver, also a good team. They played Sporting Kansas City. They're kind of like this weird, inconsistent team. They beat Seattle, who are seemingly in a free fall. And then they lost to Houston while Houston were, I think, without Coco from like either coming back late from international duty or like being rested from it. But again, lost to Houston, who's kind of mid-table in a weird spot right now, and then lost to Austin, who again, they're in this weird kind of like will they won't they moment. So it's not the juggernaut. It's not like a gauntlet, right? It's not like they're playing LAFC and then Los Angeles Galaxy and then Cincinnati and then Philadelphia and then I don't know, pick your poison, Miami or something like that. It's not the world's hardest stretch of matches. So
yeah, it's gonna be a long season in San Jose.
it'll give me a very long season. I will continue to bet against them every single week because honestly, that just feels like good business at this point. Speaking of good business, I want to talk about the good business that our correspondent Tim should be opening up. He should be opening up a pun business. He said the Reno show goes on in Minnesota. Reno so not showing up as always, which it shouldn't feel like I should be saying as always, but it keeps happening. We keep getting like last season this happened as well. I want to say that if unless my memory is failing me, I want to say there was like rumblings of some issues in the season before that as well. And it's like, here's Reynoso not showing up. Is he holding out? Is he in legal battles? Like, what's the rumor mill going to come up with this time? I don't know. Minnesota needs to figure out what's going on with Reynoso, and if that means mutually parting ways with him, if that means selling him, I figure it out.
Yeah, this individual doesn't deserve all the attention he's getting around the league talking wise because it's a shame. The type of player he came in, I enjoyed him in Argentina before coming here, and I like what Eric Ramsey's doing, and I think I like it even more once this individual is off the team because I don't know what the hell is going on in Minnesota right now.
Yeah.
I don't even think
Something in the
Minnesota
water.
knows what's going on right now.
No, that's the thing. Like MLS is terrible about transparency. It's not unique to any one team, but again, horrific amounts of transparency mean that nobody has any idea what's going on with Reynoso. There's no closure. There's no estimated timeline. Like, it's just you see this guy who we had issues with in the past is now having issues again. And it's like, here we go again. Just figure it out, someone.
Yeah,
So
completely.
obviously it's not the coach. Adrian Heath is gone. It's a new coach now. So this seems to me like it. I think we always knew it was probably a player issue, but like if you didn't know before, this should tell you now it's a player issue.
Yeah, just wanted to shout out Wickerman for joining us on the YouTube live. Thanks for joining in and commenting so far tonight. And on the Salt Lake City side of things, Chicho Arango talked about it. Isn't it fun to see him back in the league full time?
It depends. Am I playing against Chicho Arango that specific week?
No.
Then yes, yeah, I like seeing Chicho Arango in the league. I like seeing, if I'm being quite honest, I would like to see more Chicho Arango, Diego Luna combination in the league because Diego Luna is quite exciting for Salt Lake, and Chicho Arango is the finisher that they've desperately needed for several seasons now. So, yeah, it's good for them. I'm not sure if it's sustainable though. We talked to our correspondent, Mike Miller is our RSL correspondent, and we had just a brief chat with him offline of like, what's going on with RSL? Is it Pablo in, Pablo out? Are they the real deal? Are they frauds? What's going on here? And I think the consensus that we've come to is that, sustained success is not going to happen under Pablo. You will get good occasional runs, but there are just underlying issues. There's not this sort of good usage of subs. There are tactics that tend to kind of get stale, doesn't use players in the positions in which they would normally succeed. Can lightning be caught in a bottle? Yes. Can you do it every single match week? Not a chance.
Yeah, I think you covered everything.
I got it. Yeah. So, hey, speaking of catching lightning in a bottle, Wickerman is a well-known and established Sheffield Wednesday supporter. Sheffield Wednesday, I think, have been catching a little bit of lightning in a bottle here down the stretch of the season in the English Championship. So hopefully they can hold on to that as well. I want to say they're either on the border of relegation or just climbing out of it. I'm going to fact check myself on that right now, actually, just to see. But they've had a decent run of form. I mean, it's a draw to Norwich recently, which is, I'm going to say right now, Norwich are in phenomenal form. So good on them for that draw. They are, yeah, they are just on that corner, that cusp of relegation. So we'll see. Anyways, hello, Wickerman. Thank you for joining us. Always good to have you in. Bryce, shall we continue on?
Sure. Do we want to speed run some of these other draws? Like, I guess we have
speed run a St. Louis Dallas 0-0 draw. Bryce, this was the one that I wanted to spend an hour talking about.
I really don't have much talking about, but I think we covered the team Dallas in general. Could see them maybe falling behind a bit, but St. Louis, you think this season is also a reversion to the mean?
I think this is a shift in St. Louis's long-term outlook, if I'm being honest. I mean, they're sitting at, let me pull up the standings here. They're sitting in 11th, but they've only lost one match. They're getting tons of draws, loads of them. 5 draws. So they're like, America's soccer capital of getting a draw in regular season play this year. And I mean, it's not a loss. So clearly something's there that is letting them fight back in these matches and stay in it. But they need to figure out, in my opinion, the last like 20 to 30 minutes of the matches, because that seems to be where the struggle is for most of these matches. Is how do you see it out? How do you maintain any sort of like competitive edge? And I think they'll get it figured out at some point in the season. So I don't know. I think they'll make playoffs personally. I just don't know where.
I'm excited because after the Atlanta Philly game Sunday, we have St. Louis hosting Austin, that's a fun match for me because I really don't know how to feel about either one of these teams. I don't get to watch the Western Conference as much as the Eastern. So like I'll be tuning into this one live. So that's pretty excited to see how that one turns out. St. Louis feel like they need to get 3 points at home against Austin, but
Yeah, and I think they will. I think their style, especially, is going to give Austin some trouble because they've been a little more. They've shifted a little bit more, it seems, to this kind of like midfield focus instead of this really deep press in the opponent's, final third there and building up and trying to create those high turnovers, which really runs down players. And Austin, who thrive on possession, or at least historically have, I think will have issues playing through the midfield that St. Louis will put out.
yeah. I think it's quite interesting because in talks of just like their last week's results, St. Louis played in a really tight 0-0 game, but Austin played in a wide open 7-goal game that they barely won on the cusp of final time. So yeah, I do think I guess I would rather take the team that played a more stout defense that couldn't find the back of the net at home versus a team that played a wide open game. So curious to see how that one goes though.
Yep, it will be fascinating. All right, let's go. We have two more matches, Bryce. Seattle 5, Montreal 0. I don't read too much into this for Seattle. That might be a hot take. I don't look 5-0 wins, especially, but 5-goal matches for a team don't happen that often for a reason. You had a absolute worldie for Rui Diaz was one of those. I think a PK for another one, and then tons of other players getting onto the score sheet. I just like, are there encouraging signs there? Yes. Do I think they are repeatable and are going to happen every single week? I'm not so convinced.
I think they should have used 3 of those in games in the past or saved them for the incoming weeks. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really don't know how I feel about them. What I can tell you though on the Montreal side of things is good luck, brother. Like there's no hope in my opinion for Montreal this season. They're the worst team in the East, even if they're above some of the other ones so far, in my opinion.
I don't know if I'm ready to say they're the worst team in the East because New England exists in the East.
New England is probably my only question, but like below them, Orlando and NYCFC, I think, and Nashville tied with them at 7 points. I think they'll be above, but also Montreal has kind of hit me in the past. They
Yeah.
always find a way to finish in that like 9 through 11 spot, even if their roster shouldn't be that way. So
I
maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, but it's just from a roster standpoint, I'm not impressed at all.
yeah, I would put them in that spot that you're talking about. Maybe 9 to 12. Like, they have a different coach who, again, promising signs, and I like teams taking chances on young promising coaches. So the opportunity is there. There is going to be a willingness to experiment. I don't know if the spending is there. And I certainly don't think they're going to have the outlay or the player transfers to catapult them into the top half of the table. But I think they will at least be respectable over the course of the season.
I think that's fair. Like their hire is more exciting than what New England brought in
Yeah.
Portal. Like I would give me someone who is an up and coming guy that hasn't had the opportunity yet versus someone who we've seen. So you talked me into moving them up a spot. I have them at 13th right now for my East finish.
All right. Well, hey, look, we'll get there. We'll get there. My range is wider, so that way I can look as though I know more about what I'm talking about, even though I have no confidence in that 9 to 12 slot. So, all right, last one. Another goal fest. SKC versus Portland. Our wonderful correspondent Travis covering SKC also wrote in on this one. I've got to find what he wrote in on because we have the group chat going, and I'll tell you right now, everyone in here except us is apparently watching the women's game. So insane levels of
As you find it, I can
yeah.
update that Columbus and Tigres are tied at 1. So it seems like what they finished 1-1 last week too. So that might be a penalty. They're in the 91st minute, 2-2 on aggregate right now in Mexico, so we could be seeing some extra time and some penalty kicks coming up for that one here very
People love free
shortly.
soccer. I'll tell you that. All right. Hey, so I found what Travis wrote in at halftime. I thought to myself, maybe I've been too critical in my previous correspondence corners, pointing out the team's flaws. And then the second half happened. Willie Agata should never take a penalty again. We need subs earlier, and too many players on this team are slow. That aligns with my notes, where my top level note on this match was SKC have thrown away a 3-goal lead from the first half to Portland, who's being coached by Neville, who I have said multiple times I did not like as a coaching hire. Well, here we are. Portland continue to have these like late moment rallies and matches, which is very, very frustrating for purposes of trying to drive a narrative. So curse you, Neville, for making my life harder. Darn.
No, yeah, I think everyone in the group have the same feelings from New England as they did Portland into this one. I feel like you could have went a little more inspiring as the season as the offseason started. And I think that was one of the first coaching hires that happened too. Like I feel like their search ended very fast compared to the rest of the league. But yeah, Portland, I feel like Portland's always been a team I've rooted for. They've just always had good players there. Diego Villari is a player that I really liked. Actually, when Atlanta played them in the MLS Cup, I was actually in Portland visiting my brother at the time when the game was in Atlanta. So it was fun to meet a bunch of Timbers fans wearing Atlanta gear. They're all really cool in that moment. But I I can't say at this the same with them. I'm not really excited about them right now, and it's mainly because of the coach. I think they got that wrong, and until he proves me wrong, like I don't know ball. Like I feel like a lot of times it feels like I don't, even though I watch it a good amount. I'm not really excited about Portland. From the Kansas City side of things, a lot of off the field stuff, but they only have one loss. They've
Yeah.
same thing, knotted through 4 draws. They don't have a road loss this year. They're 1-0-2 on the road so far. So they've gotten 2 draws and a win so far on the road. So if they can continue that stretch, then they could find themselves higher up on the western table than Travis or other Kansas City fans expected.
Yeah. I have no idea what Kansas City is going to look like down the stretch. And again, I think it stems from the fact that they really do have a lot of players that worry me from an availability standpoint. I think I've been pretty vocal saying that there have been teams such as Seattle that needed to start their rebuild maybe a year or two earlier. And I think Kansas City might be a team that really should be looking at that rebuild. And if they haven't started replacing some of the players who are a little on the older side and maybe still have too much of a role for where they are in their careers, then we'll see if they prove me wrong. But I don't know. This would be an unfortunate thing to happen if the age and the miles on the legs started to finally catch up to them. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Besides that, I think this was the Sunday match, and unfortunately, I didn't get to follow this one too much. So, Travis's words are better than mine for sure.
Travis's words are better than both of ours because he is a passionate SKC fan, and we are both. I won't say disinterested observers, but we are SKC and Portland skeptics alike. So,
yeah, I did think we kind of we said his name, but I don't know if we talked about the game in general. Miami 2, Colorado 2. Messi came off the bench and scored, but Miami highly rotated because they have their CONCACAF match this week as well. So they're getting
yeah,
healthier and they're still in the top 4 of the East. So I I was wrong. I was wrong. I Earlier in the year I was a little hesitant of how Miami was going to do, but I do think they're going to finish top 4. I think early in the year I said don't be surprised if they're 5 or 6. That could happen, but it seems like they're getting healthy. They're going to finish this tournament up soon, and
We'll see. You never know.
yeah, I maybe I'm just going to say I'm wrong, so I can come back and say I'm right. It's easier to get it done with now.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, for all we know, Miami could go to Monterey and like win 10-0 or something and overcome this deficit that they had at home. It could happen, right?
I
It's
mean,
unlikely, but
they definitely prepared for it. Like playing against Colorado, Messi didn't start, coming back from
right.
injury, but they kept a lot of their guys out in this one, so they're gonna try. They're gonna try to pull something off.
Yeah, I mean, Messi still got a goal in this as well, right? So it's been like 50 minutes. Now we finally have to do it. We do have to finally talk about Messi, which is it's going to be interesting. Did you see? Sorry, tangent here. Did you see that Kansas City is already hyping up the Messi mania for their match this weekend? It's like Tuesday, and they're posting about like the GOAT being like cited and Kansas City, and they were like, oh, and it's like a picture of an actual goat that was like on the news or something, and they're like, we didn't know that Messi was already here. And it's like, guys, like, come on. I get it. I get Messi's coming to town, but
I mean,
like,
they're setting themselves up really bad, knowing that he's coming off an injury and he didn't start last weekend, and they have a midweek CONCACAF game. Like, I feel like I wouldn't, with the way fans have been mad when Messi isn't out there starting and playing a lot of minutes.
yeah.
Maybe I wouldn't be doing that for the backlash you could maybe get, but
How crazy would it be, Bryce, if Miami shows up, they walk into Arrowhead, and Messi is being rested for this huge sold out match at Arrowhead? It's going to be like super highly attended, extra expensive. Like, I know we're supposed to be talking about Miami, Colorado, but like just the whole Messi thing continues to be just a very weird state that the league is in, where normally players being out for a team, like a star player missing from the other team, would be cause for celebration for all these fans. Like, if I was playing against Columbus and it's like, oh, Cucho's suspended, I'd be like, yes, like, let's go get a win because they're missing Cucho. They're missing a star player. If Lucho Acosta's suspended for Cincinnati because he got 5 yellow cards for disagreeing with the ref too violently, even, because that's the only way he seems to get yellows at this point. Like, if I was a team playing, like if I was Atlanta and I saw that Cincinnati was coming with no Lucho, I'd be like, yes, like that, that should be 3 points. Like, you go out and you win that match, or at minimum, you don't lose that match. Because, like, that's a key player. Like, Hani Mukhtar being out for Nashville, I'm not afraid of Nashville anymore. Insane that, Messi being out means that fans are mad and don't want to go to the match. Yeah. And it's like, I want my money back. And it's like, what? Like,
yeah. And me and my friends almost spent a lot of money to go see them in DC, and he didn't play. So that brings back me. Same thing with LeBron James. It's like when he comes to DC, it's like they're playing one of the worst teams in the NBA. Is LeBron going to play, or is he going to sit out? Like, it's. I guess when it comes to me with that history, I always question: is it worth spending these tickets or not? And I think a lot of the other part of the country is starting to realize that when Messi comes to town as well this year.
Yeah.
It's a question you have to ask. But in terms of Colorado, they're in 9th currently, 2 wins, 2 losses, 3 draws. They're very split. They've gotten a win, a loss, a draw at home, a win, a loss, and 2 draws on the road. Is this what you expected from Colorado? We talked about Columbus, Saracucho, but Colorado, like before this is already better than last year by far. But
yeah,
they had a lot of offseason hype, right? Like, I think they had a little bit more than this.
They had tons of offseason hype, and I think a big part of that offseason hype was Georgi Mihailovic, though. Prior to Mihailovic, when Armas was announced as the coach, I think a lot of us were not fans of that as well. So maybe it's easy to forget why we weren't big fans of that Armas hire when Mihailovic got announced. Under Armas, sitting in 9th place, 2-2-3 in terms of win-loss draw, maybe that's actually pretty fair considering who the coach is and teams are supposed to be. bigger than just one player, unless your name's Lionel Messi. But yeah, like I would have expected better. I don't know how much better I would have expected, if I'm being honest. Like, I wouldn't expect them to be in first right now. I don't know if I would even expect them to be top 3, but yeah, I guess I would expect them to be like maybe between 5 and 7 from just the offseason in terms of player moves. So maybe sitting in ninth with Armis, who we weren't a fan of, is about reasonable.
Well, luckily, next week they play at San Jose.
Oh, nice. Instant win. That's 3 points.
The week after, they play home against Dallas.
Oh, nice. 3 points. That's 6 for 6 right there.
So if you're giving me 6 points, they're about where me and you, I think, are leaning to where we were saying we expect Colorado in the standings. So as the theme is with all of these teams, I think we need to dive into the schedule a little bit more.
Yeah.
Some teams have had easy schedules. Some teams have an easier April ahead of them. So I think we can get back here. Maybe Gavin will allow me to be in the same room as him, and we can dive back into this.
If you're even 2 different people. I mean, it's impossible to say.
Yeah, it's a fair point. But yeah, I think that'll be a better standpoint through this month to see where these teams kind of sit in the standings. And I think you're going to start seeing these tiers line up a little bit more.
Yeah, completely agree. Couldn't have said it better myself. Bryce, I would love to include you in the normal sort of thing that we do, where we end out the show talking about sports betting, of course. However, I don't want to steal what's going on between Gavin and I. And more importantly, Bryce, I had a horrific week of betting. So I'm going to see if maybe I can have a better week by not talking about it on the episode for once. And we'll review next week to see what happens there. But other than that, it's also been like an hour and 51 minutes we've been recording. So I think we could just about call it to wrap up, right?
Yeah. You happy thinking about bets? Because I haven't looked either. So yeah, I think we're good to wrap it up. I think if you made it this far, you've proven you're a sicko. You don't need to prove it anymore.
Yeah, you can go buy your patch off Amazon, get like a drop shipped thing from like a company overseas that's listing their products, and have it 2 days shipped to you, and you can sew it on, or you can heat press it onto your hats or onto your jacket or something. You earned it if you listened to this whole episode.
Yeah, I think this just shows that got to get back in here more often, because if I don't get back here till July, this one might be a 3-hour one.
It's very true. Very true. Well, hey, as always, you can find Bryce on social media at BLeslie19. You can find me on social media at Mr. Danger Russ. You can find the podcast on social media at MLS Now Podcast. Listeners, Bryce, till next time.